Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Olumide Macaulay.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, barely 2 days after Southern Kaduna Peace Summit, gunmen kill several people in fresh attacks on villages in Zango Kataf local government area. Benue state government asked military to release 40 repentant militants arrested along with late militia leader Tewase Akwaza on their way to receive a state pardon. Candidates of 5 political parties in the Edo State governorship election present their agenda as they square up in a debate organized by Channels Television. And U.S. President Donald Trump announces historic agreements reached by Israel and Bahrain to fully normalize their relations. Plus business, sports, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, African Export-Import Bank signs a 150 million euros agreement with French Development Agency to promote sustainable climate financing in Africa.
And on sports news, Super Eagles defender Ola Aina signs for Fulham on a season-long loan from Torino Football Club.
Barely 2 days after religious leaders convened a peace summit to find a lasting solution to the conflicts in southern Kaduna, gunmen have killed several people in fresh attacks, resulting in renewed tensions between the Atiap natives and their Fulani neighbors. Police authorities are yet to confirm the latest incidents, but the spokesman of the Southern Kaduna People's Union, Luka Biniat, says 8 people were killed by suspected Fulani militia in Zango Kataf and Kaura local government area. On his part, the leader of Fulani community, Dr. Ahmed Yande, says 4 Fulani people were killed by gunmen suspected to be Atiap militia between Tuesday and Wednesday this week. He explains that the incident happened when they were attending a peace summit in Kafanchan. He, however, says security operatives have arrested some people in connection with the attacks, even as he calls on his people not to engage in any form of reprisals. Also in security, Governor Samuel Otom of Benue State is asking the military to return 40 other repentant militants arrested along with the militia leader Tewase Akwaza, also known as Ghana, on their way to receive state pardon. The governor is also calling for the return of confiscated official vehicles and those that were hired, as well as documents in the spirit of peace and confidence building. Briefing journalists after a meeting of the State Security Council at the Government House Makurdi, Governor Otom conveyed the pain of the Sankera stakeholders over the killing of Ghana.
Our people are all pained with what took place. As a government, we are waiting for more clarification on the ugly incident of what really took place. And we will continue to dialogue with security agencies, especially the military. But we are not going to be confrontational. We are going to find out the truth. It is the resolve of this meeting, the expanded State Security Council meeting, that the repented youths who were arrested by the military should be released so that they will continue from where they were coming to receive their amnesty and they were arrested. The other thing is all items that were confiscated, we are also appealing to the military to return them. Some of those vehicles were hired, some of them are official vehicles to our government officials, and some other things were documents. So we appeal that all this be returned to us.
To the Federal Capital Territory, residents of Tungamaje, a satellite community in Abuja, are still in shock 48 hours after gunmen overran the settlement, robbing and kidnapping 11 people, including women and children. We spoke to some of the victims who regained their freedom as they narrate their ordeal in the hands of their captors.
Tungamaji, a satellite community on the Kaduna Road in Abuja, was in commotion on Thursday morning when armed men attacked the community, stealing and kidnapping 11 people, including women and children. We went round the community to hear from victims who later regained their freedom. It's a tale of horror, shock and disbelief. We saw sympathizers sitting in clusters. The mood is aptly captured here.
On that day,
for security reasons, we tried to conceal the identity of these victims, many of whom still have their relations with their captors.
They spent almost 2 hours here. After they finish, they just carry us. They go inside bush. On the way going, my wife fainted. Can't get up again. They come select us one by one. In each house, when they carry us, 6 houses, when they carry Pekin, they carry their Pekin. Some they carry his father go. They say, make we go back, go find money. If no money, we like.
The last way that we read, they selected us. They selected people that they know, say that they don't have strength again to work. So they selected about 5 of us, carry 6 people again, continue their journey.
This is the bush path through which the abductors left with their captives before a combined team of police and vigilante responded to the distress call.
All this was just happened tonight. They just started like around 12 night they start. For that 12, the calls us, highest before that 12:30 starts them to us. This is the road where they follow. We must trace them, reach like a 2 kilometers before we get those 5 people they release.
As we put a call to the police and the rest authority in security, they find it very difficult to come for the rescue because due to the bad roads we have. Had it been the road as smoother than they are, I'm very sure that those abducted would have not gone like that. We will rescue all with the help of the police and the vigilante.
The presence of armed police officers here restored some confidence, but residents would love to see a quick rescue of the remaining 6 victims.
What we had on the ground was good enough. They encountered the hoodlums and were able to rescue about 5 persons. Therefore, we said there is a need for further strengthening of that particular sector, and that has been done. I assure you, within the shortest possible time, we'll be able to get all the victims free.
Kidnapping and other forms of organized crime are on the rise in the nation's capital, and this remains so, even as the police arrests some of these criminals on a daily basis.
Meanwhile, comments by a former central bank governor, Dr. Obadiah Mailafia, on the conflicts have resulted in his invitation by security agencies, and now a high court sitting in Jos Plateau State has reserved ruling on the case filed by a Dr. Mailafia for the enforcement of his fundamental rights and personal liberty and fair hearing. That also includes Mailafia's challenge of his invitation by the police on a matter that is being investigated by the Department of State Security Services. The police, in a counter affidavit, had insisted that the applicant deliberately filed the action to stop the force from performing its statutory lawful duty and asked the court to dismiss the application. After listening to the applicants and the defendants, Justice Arum Ashums adjourned the matter for ruling to September the 29th. In the meantime, the Department of State Security Services has ordered Dr. Obadiah Mailafia to appear at its Jos office on Monday, 14th of September, 2020. Away from security, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Minister of Labour, Dr. Chris Ngige, to meet with organized labour and hear their grievances on the state of the economy. After briefing the President on the state of affairs in his ministry, Dr. Ngige told journalists that the meeting is expected to hold tomorrow in Abuja. According to him, all the institutions that have something to do with government's finances, as well as the labor unions and civil society, will be part of that meeting. Our State House correspondent, Kayla Megwa, reports.
All over the world, when demands made by labor unions to change an adverse policy or seek better welfare and working conditions for their members are ignored, the next resort is a strike action. The problem is, continuous downing of tools by sectors that are essential to national growth puts a strain on such sectors, with a ripple effect on the nation. For instance, the Academic Staff Union of Universities is still on strike after failing to reach an agreement with the federal government on terms for integrating universities' transparency accountability system into the Integrated Personnel Payroll System, IPPIS.
NEC resolved to embark on a total, comprehensive and indefinite strike action beginning from Monday, 23rd March 2020, until the issues are satisfactorily resolved.
But it's most worrying to see strikes in the health sector, especially at a time when the country is battling to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. Recently, the Joint Health Sectors Union issued a 2-week ultimatum to the federal government to address issues of service delivery, infrastructure, and payment of the shortfall in COVID-19 hazard allowances.
Where the unthinkable happens, as procedural people, we will give a very short notice within the ambits of the law, and then we'll mobilize our people to prepare for a very, very pointed industrial action.
On Monday, September the 7th, members of the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors declared a nationwide industrial action to protest the non-payment of COVID-19 hazard allowance, the non-funding of residency training programs, and outstanding arrears of salaries.
It is painful, especially to some of us who are medical doctors, that while efforts are being made to make sure that the ship of state is afloat, especially in the medical industry with the pandemic, people are going on strike. And the only conclusion somebody outside there will take, logical conclusion, is that people are acting another script.
We must not push ourselves too far. There is no right that is absolute. Every right is qualified.
The doctors had to call off the strike after finding out they were not fully informed on their demands being met. With these strikes placing a strain on the economy, the president instructs the Minister of Labour to meet with organized labour immediately and find a lasting solution to these lingering issues.
Meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. As I leave here now, I will relate more with the Chief of Staff and the leadership of the two congresses, the labor federations in Nigeria for today. So talk with them and do this meeting tomorrow.
Industrial actions are a democratic tool and probably among the most effective ways of stressing employee grievances. But constant
In part 2, after the break, 5 of the candidates in the Edo State governorship election make their case as they square up in a studio debate in the first in the series of debates organized by Channels Television. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the News at 10 live on Channels Television, Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Barely 2 days after Southern Kaduna Peace Summit, gunmen killed several people in fresh attacks on villages in Zangon Kataf local government area. Benue State government asked military to release 40 repentant militants arrested along with late militia leader Tewase Akwaza on their way to receive a state pardon. Candidates of 5 political parties in the Edo State governorship election present their agenda as they square up in a debate organized by Channels Television. And U.S. President Donald Trump announces historic agreements reached by Israel and Bahrain to fully normalize their relations. To politics, candidates in the Edo State governorship election will be made to sign a peace accord on September the 15th as part of efforts to ensure a peaceful poll. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, announced these plans at a stakeholders meeting in Abuja. He also emphasized that the commission will conduct the Ondo State governorship election on October the 10th as scheduled, despite the destruction of over 5,000 card readers in a fire.
We are ready, we are good to go, and we'll continue with our preparations for the election. INEC is not even contemplating the postponement of the Edo election. So the election is going to go on the 19th of September. May I therefore seize this opportunity to appeal to all the political actors in Edo State and Ondo to allow the process to proceed without disruption. Yes, we received the sad news last night of a fire incident involving the container housing the smart card readers for the Ondo election. Will that affect the elections? I'm glad to say that we have recovered from that. The election in Ondo is going to go ahead. We have huge capacity in the neighboring states to get additional smart card readers. And I had a discussion with the REC in Oyo. In Oyo, we have almost 7,000 smart card readers. So getting 5,000 to support Ondo is not an issue at all. This is not a general election, which is holding nationwide. It's an off-season election. So we have recovered in Ondo while investigation continues on the cause of fire in our office in Ondo. The Ondo election will not be affected by what happened yesterday to our smart card readers.
Also in the Edo State governorship election, some of the candidates that will be taking part in that election have been speaking on their programs and manifestos. At a studio debate organized by Channels Television, 5 of the candidates took turns to explain their agenda to the electorate. The candidates who took part in the debate are the ADP governorship candidate, Eboy Emmanuel, the APM governorship candidate, Igbeneweka Osamwede, and the NNPP candidate, Tracy Agol. Others are the YPP governorship candidate, Jones Osajobare, as well as the ZLP governorship candidate, Bishop Ahalome. The debate is the first in the series, with another one billed for Sunday, September the 13th, that will have more candidates presenting their agenda to the people of Edo State. Meanwhile, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the upcoming Edo governorship election, Pastor Osage Ezeyamu, has promised to fully implement his campaign manifesto, the simple agenda which he believes will transform Edo State. He stated this during the APC Ward to Ward campaign rally in Ipoba Oka local government area of the state.
The new Benin axis of Oedo local government is agog as the APC arrives for campaigns in the area. The rally is one of those scheduled as the party begins to wind down activities ahead of the September the 19th election. The APC governorship candidate, Pastor Osage Ezeyamu, assures the crowd that it will be a new dawn of more development for their area if he wins the upcoming election.
We will put good schools here. We are going to see plenty of businesses here. Because this place, like I talk, is a very important place to us. You get many things that we promise. Employment, empowerment, all of them do for this place. Even this place qualify to get hospital because If you look the 45 communities where they here, if you look the land where they here, it even reach to be local government, not be ward.
I know there is a lot of anger in your
The former APC National Chairman Adams Oshamale, on the flip side, says he is convinced that his party's candidate, Pastor Yamu, is the best man for the #1 job.
Last time I spoke for Obaseki. This time, Pastor is speaking for himself. And he not only say it, he has written it down. And as you can see, even before you reminded him, what you are asking for is in his paper. So it means you believe in it. We only need prayers for God to give him the enablement to do that which is in his heart. And I'm sure he will do it.
It's just a matter of days to D-Day. It's the day when the Edo people will be going to the polls to select a new governor, a position the APC believes it will ultimately occupy.
More on the Edo elections in the course of this broadcast. Meanwhile, for the expected election litigations ahead of the same Edo and Ondo governorship poll, the president of the Court of Appeal, Justice Monica Dongban Mesem, is asking the tribunal judges to stay with the laws of the land when adjudicating on election matters. At a one-day training for judges appointed to serve on the tribunals for both polls, Justice Dongban Mesem says a strict application of laws is a prerequisite for a just society.
Following the inauguration of the 85 judges that will be serving on the Edo and Ondo state governorship election tribunals, the Court of Appeal organized this training to keep the bench abreast of the laws guiding the conduct of elections in the country. Election tribunals are established in pursuant to Section 285 of the Constitution and Section 133 of the Electoral Act. Section 1, subsection 3 of the 6th Schedule of the 1999 Constitution empowers the President of the Court of Appeal to appoint election tribunal judges.
Human nature will always challenge whatever decision is made until affirmed by some other authority. The INEC, I believe, will do its work, but first, the voters will go out, cast their votes. INEC is expected to do its job properly, and yet dissatisfaction will come out, and people will feel dissatisfied with what has been done, and that is what creates petitions placed before the election tribunals.
More admonitions were given to the judges.
The election petition tribunals are put in place to make sure that they don't take laws into their hands. And you notice that immediately after the election, don't worry, we are going to the tribunal. They have hope. They have a belief in you that you are going to set right what they term to be the wrong.
Note, in the cases you are going to see, you will see the good, the bad, and the very ugly. But take heart, it's a job that must be done. Somebody has to do it.
Section 133, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act specifically makes it mandatory for election petition tribunals to be constituted not later than 14 days before an election is held, and under Section 258, subsection 6 of the Constitution, the tribunal must deliver its judgment in writing within 180 days from the date a petition is filed.
To Kogi State and the education sector, Governor Yahaya Bello is promising massive renovation of tertiary institutions across the state to enhance effective teaching and learning for both staff and students. Governor Bello stated this while commissioning some projects at the State Polytechnic in Lokoja, the state capital. He says similar gesture will be replicated in other state tertiary institutions, secondary and primary schools.
Governor Yahaya Bello's convoy arrives at the State Polytechnic Lokoja to an audience of students and other dignitaries. This is his first official assignment since his victory at the Supreme Court. He is here to commission a digital security office, a 30-bed clinic for the students, a theatre, and a laboratory, after which he will inspect other ongoing projects. Governor Bello describes education as the bedrock of development, reiterating his determination to prioritize the sector for optimum results.
We are already at work in terms of education. For instance, despite the distraction which followed our re-election, we have successfully completed the legal and regulatory frameworks for establishing the Confluence University of Science and Technology, OSARA. As a government, we shall continue to nourish the Kogi State Polytechnic Lokoja for maximum functionality, as well as all other existing primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions.
Then the governor moves to the main event.
The glory of God and benefits of humanity. So help you.
The Kogi State government says the projects will help improve learning condition of students and in turn help them perform better in their studies.
In Bauchi State, the state government now knows why it has challenges in the payment of salaries and pensions after revelations of massive fraud emerged in the nominal and payroll system. A consulting firm hired by the state government to look into the payment system reports that 700 million naira was overpaid as pension in 2 years to fraudulent persons through the payroll. Our correspondent, Hajara Aliu, reports.
You can see the statement, 1.4 million.
There's been an exponential rise in the wage bill of Bauchi State from 4.5 billion naira in 2015 to 7 billion naira currently, without records of employment in the same period, despite deaths and retirement figures. A situation the Bauchi State government has been trying to figure out as this parley with civil servants, labor leaders, government officials, elder statesmen, stakeholders and the media exposes massive corruption in the system. Some of the findings by a financial consultant reveals how state government was defrauded of monies running into billions of naira.
This person collected, you can see the statement, 1.4 million, 2.9 million, like that. A total value of 35 million was paid to this individual that was supposed to get only 34,000 naira as a sanction.
The irregularities are more prominent in the Ministry of Health and Health Management Board.
For the past 15 years, there was no nominal role in the Ministry of Health and Health Management Board.
Governor Bala Muhammad reveals that 1,279 illegitimate staff, including 100 doctors, have been removed from the payroll of the Ministry of Health, while 1,000 staff on the payroll of the Ministry of Education are non-existent on the nominal roll.
Very soon we are coming out with the names of those beneficiaries. We have not done it today, not that we don't have it. We have it. We will come out with their names. We will go through the normal civil service way of disciplining them, at the same time going to the court to prosecute them and jail them.
The governor assures citizens that in 1 month, the anomalies would be resolved. And once the payroll and nominal roll is cleaned, resources will be freed. And this will pave way for employment of more genuine workers. Hajira Aliyu, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, African Export-Import Bank signs the 150 million euro agreement with the French Development Agency to promote sustainable climate financing in Africa. That's on Business News. Please join us again. Welcome back. The Niger state government has confirmed that at least 100 communities are already submerged following rising water levels and heavy rainfall. According to the Director General of the State's Emergency Management Agency, residents of communities on the banks of the River Niger and those on flood plains are mostly at risk. Residents are also warned to brace up for more flooding, as recent predictions show severe flooding resulting from the overflow of riverbanks from neighboring countries.
Every year, Niger State suffers heavy flooding, which leads to loss of lives, property and farmlands. This year, the state is already counting its losses, with flood wreaking havoc across the communities in the state. It's the reason officials from the National Emergency Management Agency have visited the state basically to strengthen collaboration with stakeholders in raising awareness on response to flood disaster. The first port of call for the team is the Deputy Governor's office, where the representative of the Director General of NEMA gives the flood outlook for Niger State.
The highly probable flood risk areas in Niger State are Suleja, Magama, Aguara, Bako, Shiroro, Boso, Ushishi, Lavu, and Lapai local government areas. Frontline local government authorities and other response agencies to put in place preparedness actions to carry out public enlightenment campaigns targeting vulnerable communities to undertake mitigation actions and prepare for evacuation to safe ground. 3. Identifying high grounds for possible internally displaced camps to shelter evacuated communities. 4. Desilting river channels and canals. Number 5. Removing all refuse and weeds from water channels, drainages, and all avenues for river runoffs so as to allow free flow of flood waters.
But there are already over 100 communities that are currently suffering from flooding.
I think we have not less than 100 for now. For Mokwa alone. Yes. Community.
People affected is over 12,000.
Because in my community, Kede, where I came from, we have 60 polling units. And we have some villages that are there. The villages are more than 100 or something. There's no one of the village that is left out.
But there is a bigger concern. The State Emergency Management Agency reveals the possibility of an outbreak of black flooding.
Apart of the traditional flood we used to have, there's another one that it is not as a result of rainfall within the geographical location. This one is coming from other countries. And for that reason, we are still seeking for more collaboration from NEMA and all critical stakeholders for hands to be all on deck in case of any eventuality.
So far, since the beginning of the rainy season this year, over 10 persons have been killed by flood in Niger State. This is coming at a time when the state, like many others in Nigeria, are battling to contain the spread of COVID-19, which also raises concern about safety during response to disaster. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
And now for business news, here's Tenyo Lashabowali.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Olumide. Welcome to Business News. The African Export-Import Bank has signed a €150 million or $177.64 million agreement with the French Development Agency, AFD, which is aimed at promoting sustainable and climate finance in Africa. In a statement released today, Afrexim Bank says the financing program aims to support its new climate finance strategy, which will target green, low-carbon, socially inclusive, and more resilient investments across the continent. The AFD says it has also approved a €500,000 grant for technical assistance to support Afrexim Bank in developing its financing program. The strategic partnership between both multilateral institutions is expected to promote innovative financing mechanism for sustainable development of the African continent. Meanwhile, global ratings agency Fitch has affirmed Afrexim Bank's long-term issuer default rating at BBB- with stable outlook. In a statement released today, the Fitch attributes the bank's BBB- rating to its intrinsic features, including solvency and liquidity, which are both assessed at A-. Meanwhile, the ratings agency has revised its assessment of the bank's credit risk to high from moderate due to the expected worsening in the credit quality of the banking portfolio due to COVID-19. In March this year, Afrexim Bank's board of directors approved a $3 billion net pandemic trade impact mitigation facility to assist its member states in addressing the economic and health impacts of the pandemic. While the total value of transactions through electronic payments channels stood at 263.78 trillion naira in the second quarter of this year, that's according to latest data by the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS, in its latest selected banking sector report, says that a total of 1.3 billion online transfer transactions were carried out, valued at 72.25 trillion naira, dominating the volume of transactions recorded. Meanwhile, total value of credit to private sector allocated by the bank stood at 18.82 trillion naira as at the second quarter of 2020, with oil and gas and manufacturing sectors getting credit allocations of 3.62 trillion naira and 3.07 trillion naira to record the highest credit allocation as at the period under review. The naira weakened further by 3.3% to 455 against the dollar, the payroll market today, after traders cast doubt on the central bank's capacity to meet FX demand as international flights resume across the country. This is coming in the first week that the central bank resumed its sale of foreign exchange to bureau de change operators in a move which currency traders expect will give the naira more support. Meanwhile, the naira was flat against the dollar at 386 at the investors and exporters. More bargain hunting for bank stocks helped the equities market to close in positive territory for a second day after a three-day sell-off by investors. Layo Adegoke has details of today's trading at the NSE.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Markets Report. In line with traders' expectation, the stock markets managed to close Friday's trading session in the green, marking its second-day recovery this week after investors sustained their interest for bank stocks. Take a look at the board. The banking sector remains the best performer among the 5 key counters of the NSE, and this is largely attributed to bargain hunting for the shares of GT Bank, Zenith Bank, FBN Holdings and ETI. All of these, as well as 15 other gainers, helped to lift the market's main index higher by 0.28% and added 37 billion naira to the overall value of listed equities. Meanwhile, the shares of Police Microfinance Bank is top advancer with 8.66% increase in its share price. Adova, formerly known as Forte Oil, leads 14 other losers, while Custodian Investment is the major contributor to a total of 212.73 million shares traded today. Right now, investors' attention remains focused on bank stocks, as most of them will be marked for dividend payments next week, which is expected to determine the market's position in the coming days. And that's the Stock Markets Report. I'm Layo Adegoke.
Thanks a lot, Layo. Meanwhile, it's a mixed close for the world major stock markets for Friday, as investors focus attention on Brexit standoff and tech shares continue to struggle for balance. Here are some of the closing numbers for the day. And that's Business News Tonight. It's back to you, Olumide.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Tenny. Still ahead on the news at 10. U.S. President Donald Trump announces historic agreement reached by Israel and Bahrain to fully normalize their relations. Plus, more stories from our London studio on Around the World in 5. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Israel has opened a new chapter with the Gulf state of Bahrain as both countries reach a landmark deal to fully normalize their relations. U.S. President Donald Trump, who made this announcement, presented the Middle East peace plan in January. Bahrain is the second Arab country to make peace with Israel in 30 days. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Germany has said that 10 European countries have agreed to take 400 unaccompanied minors who fled Greece's largest migrant camp when it was gutted by fire. Interior Minister Horst Seehofer has said that most would go to Germany and France, but thousands of refugees remain sleeping in the open after fleeing the blaze as authorities struggle to find accommodation. Near the ruins of Moira, local residents have blocked roads to stop charities from delivering aid and said they were against the building of new tents.
I feel pain because I have kids. And then I do this is like 4 days. I'm outside and then no eat, no food, no water, nothing. Now sleeping out.
The clock has run out on how long Europe can live without a migration policy.
More than 500,000 people in the US state of Oregon have fled deadly wildfires that are raging across the Pacific Northwest. Fanned by unusually hot, dry winds, dozens of fires have been sweeping the state, and at least one is being treated as suspected arson. At least 4 people have died so far. More than 100 blazes are currently scorching 12 western US states. The worst affected are Oregon, California, and Washington, where entire towns have been destroyed. Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris has called US President Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus outbreak as outrageous.
This is an individual.
It comes the day after revelations surfaced from journalist Bob Woodward that Trump admitted he knew weeks before the first confirmed US coronavirus death that the virus was dangerous and repeatedly downplayed it publicly. Trump has defended his good and proper answers and said he had not wanted to create panic. Meanwhile, India's coronavirus situation has continued to worsen as the country reported almost 96,000 new cases in 24 hours, rewriting the world's record of a single spike in cases in one country. Earlier this week, India overtook Brazil to become the country with the second highest number of virus infections in the world, behind only the United States. India and China have agreed to quickly disengage from a standoff that has seen gunfire at a disputed border and accusations of kidnapping. Their foreign ministers met on Thursday and said they would ease tensions. Soldiers from both countries have periodically clashed along the poorly demarcated border, called the line of actual control. Both sides have accused each other of straying into their territory, and the clashes have sometimes turned deadly. Demonstrators have taken to the streets for a second night in Colombia's capital, Bogotá, to press ahead with protests against police brutality that have erupted in violence and taken 9 lives so far. It comes after the death this week of law student Javier Ordonez. A widely shared video filmed by Ordonez's friend showed the father of 2 being repeatedly shocked with a stun gun by police. He died later in hospital. Since the protest began on Wednesday, at least 9 people have been killed, while hundreds of civilians and police officers have been injured. Flash floods in South Sudan have continued to displace thousands of households. The floods have left at least 102 people dead in the country and destroyed or damaged tens of thousands of homes. Authorities have declared a 3-month state of emergency. Flooding regularly hits Sudan in the summer, but this year the Blue Nile has reached its highest average level since records began in 1912. That's according to local authorities. Renowned South African sculptor Pitika Ntuli has had to adapt to a new way of exhibiting his art due to COVID-19. His latest project, Azib Uele Emasisweni, meaning Return to the Source, was recently named the highest artistic achievement in the history of solo exhibitions in the country. The 78-year-old has spent 3 years creating the sculptures, which are meant to encourage society to resolve the issues of greed and corruption.
We have a pandemic here that is threatening our lives. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying, yet there are still some people who are using the money for the pandemic, in order to corrupt it for their own children and they themselves. So these bones then, as we are dealing with here, are actually making a pronouncement.
And finally, a group of senior athletes in the Chinese city of Tianjin have become local celebrities for their unique gymnastic skills. Older but limber, they hold regular training sessions in a park and even have their own fan club. The average age of the team is 60, with some senior members in their 80s. They outdo most young athletes by the stunning performance they put on. The gymnastics team now has over 300 members whose life after retirement seems to be anything but boring. And that's for international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. On the Edo governorship elections, the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has barred security aides, attached VIPs and political appointees from accompanying their principals on election day in Edo State. This is confirmed in a statement from Force Public Relations Officer Frank Mba, who says the IGP warns that anyone flouting this order will be severely reprimanded. The IGP is also asking officers and men on election duty in the state to adhere to standard best practices and the approved code of conduct for the elections. As part of efforts at ensuring proper coordination of security arrangements, the IGP has deployed the Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of research and planning, DIG Adeleye Olushola Oyabade, to supervise the general security arrangement for the polls. And now we'll turn our attention to sports news. Here's Ayotunde Balogun.
Many thanks, Olumide. It's official. Super Eagles defender Ola Aina has joined Fulham on a season-long loan from Italian football club Torino. After finalising his move, Aina said he is very excited and privileged to sign for Fulham and is ready to play wherever he is called upon. Aina has primarily operated at right-back throughout his career, but his versatility means he can also fill in across the defence or further forward. Fulham also holds an option to make the deal permanent. The 2020-2021 English Premier League returns on Saturday, less than 2 months after the previous season held up by the COVID-19 pandemic finally concluded on July the 26th. Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool are all in action, while the Manchester clubs, that's United and City, are excused for the time being after their European exertions. The new Premier League season will kick off with a London derby between Arsenal and Fulham at Craven Cottage. The Gunners placed 8th last term, but there is quite an optimism about the promising future under coach Mikel Arteta.
The gap is enormous, and we have to try that gap as quick as possible, really short. And in order to do that, there are a lot of aspects in the game that we have to improve.
Tottenham and Everton also have ambitions of doing better than 6th and 10th in Jose Mourinho and Carlo Ancelotti's first full year in charge.
Win every match. That's our ambition. Of course, you can look at me and say, what a silly answer, which I accept. Everybody knows that we are not going to win every match.
The goal that we want to achieve is to fight for the first position of the Premier League, to be able to reach Europe.
Liverpool FC will begin their title defence against Leeds United, and Jurgen Klopp is not one to rest on his laurels.
We just give it a try again, and we know we will face incredibly strong teams, and it's all about us, how we can put all these intense performances on the pitch again and again and again.
Chelsea FC are expected to challenge for the title after spending over £200 million in the transfer market, and the expectations are not lost on manager Frank Lampard.
I understand that, and I hope that Chelsea fans are excited because, I'm not going to lie, we've brought in what we feel are a high level of player that are going to improve our squad.
Although fans are still not allowed in the stadiums because of COVID-19, having the Premier League back and on television will suffice until normalcy returns. Valtteri Bottas was fastest ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen in a closely fought Tuscan GP second practice, which featured costly crashes and spins as drivers explored the unforgiving limits of Mugello. Lando Norris heavily crashed his McLaren, Kimi Raikkonen and Sergio Perez collided, while both Ferraris spun as Charles Leclerc failed to replicate the promising pace from his start. Sebastian Vettel also stopped on track at the end of the eventful session with a mechanical failure, citing an engine problem. And that's a wrap on Sports News.
Thank you, Ekaite. And the main news again, barely 2 days after the Southern Kaduna Peace Summit, gunmen today killed several people in fresh attacks on villages in Zango Kataf local government area. The incidents renewed tension between the Etiap and Fulani communities. Also today, the Benue state government asked military authorities to release 40 repentant militants arrested along with late militia leader Tewase Akwaza on their way to receive a state pardon. And U.S. President Donald Trump today announced a historic agreement reached by Israel and Bahrain to fully normalize their relations. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night and a great weekend. I'm Olumide Macaulay.